What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here. I'm going to show you how I am going to set up my fantasy cruncher for this FanDuel single game slate tonight between the Chiefs and the Chargers. First, I'm just going to show you I set up my own unique columns. This is something that you'd have to do on your own. It's not the most important thing. It's important for me, so I'm going to go to Quick Views, Showdown Settings. Important for me only because I change my projections as I go a little bit incrementally, and it's just easier for me to see them like this. You don't need to change things this way. You can use the thumbs up over here. That'll be in the same place as long as you don't change it. But this is just the view that I like when I'm using Fantasy Cruncher. The things that are important to me are all kind of right here. But the more important settings we're going to be looking at are actually, before I get there, I want to just double check in kickers. Okay, I do still have Harrison Butker, a projection for him. If you have a projection in the My Projection field for Harrison Butker, make sure you get him out of there. As long as I'm here, I'm actually going to also go through and set a cap on my MVP exposures. Typically in the advanced settings, you have the option of setting a universal cap on all players, and that will apply to every player, both in the MVP spot and in the flex spots. I only like to typically set a cap in the MVP spot. Sometimes, it changes. Every site is different, but typically in the MVP spot, I will set a cap because I want to get to different MVPs. There are obvious exceptions to this. Sometimes a Lamar Jackson slate, you might want 100%, you might want 0%. Whatever. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to change my exposure cap just in the MVP tab from 100% to 20%. So now I'll get no more than 20% of any MVP. All right, and then I will go into my advanced options. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with these settings. Because it's a single game slate, I'm going to keep this at one unique player per lineup. That just means you can have a lineup that is only one player different than another one of your lineups. I'm just going to keep it at that for this slate. I'm doing 150 lineups. If you're doing 20 lineups, you might want to set that to 2 or 3, have your lineups spread out a little bit more. But for 150 lineups on a single game slate, I like to use one, and I'm just going to keep it there. All right. Team salary, I don't set a minimum salary. I do set a maximum salary just because I know if I use the entire $60,000 salary cap, I'm probably going to have a duplicated lineup. It's probably going to be duplicated 100 times, 200 times. These are huge contests. And I'd like to have my lineups a little bit more unique because it's going to take a lot of luck for any lineup you build to win on this slate. Even if it's the best projected lineup, it's still very unlikely to win. So if my lineup happens to win, if I get super lucky, I want to not be splitting that top prize with that many players. So I'm going to set a max salary cap here. This is FanDuel, so we're using increments of $500. I would leave at least $1,000 on the table, in which case you would set this at 59,000. Typically, I'll set it even lower than that for the sake of this video. I'm just going to set it at 58.5. We do now have defensive players on FanDuel, so that is a fun change this year. So we can use this offensive players versus defense. I'm going to change this to 4 players again, just for the sake of getting unique. I don't really mind having 4 players from an offense against just the defense from the other team. I'm perfectly happy with that. Not many people are going to do it. Again, global exposure cap, I'm going to keep that at 100. I already showed you I changed the MVP cap to 20%. You can do that out on the main screen, but in the global exposure cap, I'm just going to keep that at 100%. Randomness, it's all a matter of how much you want to control what happens with your lineups. I like to include a good bit of randomness. Also makes Fantasy Cruncher work a little bit faster the more randomness you have. But I'm going to keep it at 50%. If you want complete control, change that to 0%. Hey guys, we've got a no-brainer offer for you from BetMGM today. Bet just $10, and if any team scores a touchdown tonight in the Chiefs-Chargers game, you'll win $200. We won't see many sure things like this game with a 54 total, so I would recommend jumping on this offer now to win your free $200. Just click the link in the video description below to claim it. Minimum projection included in my lineups. Currently, I won't get any player below a projection of 3 fantasy points. I think I might keep this at 3 actually, and then just boost up projections of players. Another thing you could do is lower this to say 2, to then you'll get any player that has a projection between 2 and 3 fantasy points as well. But I'm just going to keep that at 3 and probably give players little boosts. And I do not use this. This is just tells you how much to give a boost if you give a player a thumbs up. Currently, you're giving an 8% boost to that player's projection if you hit the thumbs up icon. You can change this so that you give a bigger boost or a smaller boost. I think 8%, is good enough. I don't typically use the thumbs up, but I would recommend it for newer Fantasy Cruncher users. If you don't have a lot of experience with changing projections, doing your own projections, that kind of thing, I'd probably think 8% is probably good enough. All right, that will do it for my general settings. Now I'm going to skip over. I don't use the projections tab. I don't use the position stacks tab. I don't use the team stacks tab for these single game slates. I only use the groups tab. So I'll go to the groups tab, and now I'm going to create a new group. Didn't work. Okay, there we go. I'm going to do a Mahomes MVP group. And the purpose of this group, the purpose of my Mahomes MVP group is to say, if I have Mahomes in the MVP spot, which means I am probably expecting him to be the highest scoring player in the game. This is FanDuel, so you don't have any kind of salary adjustment for your MVP spot. You do get 1.5 points per fantasy point for the player in the MVP spot, but they don't cost 1.5 times more like they do on DraftKings. But with Mahomes in the MVP spot, I think that I'm still going to want at least one pass catcher to come along for the ride. I think even though Mahomes does run a little bit, I don't think he runs enough that he's likely to be the MVP without bringing along another Chiefs pass catcher who has a big score. So I'd like to choose Mahomes at MVP. I'm going to put him in the key player spot, and he's going to be my only key player in this group. And then I'll go through and find all of my Chiefs pass catchers and I'm going to look at every player. So I'm looking at the my projection column, the team column. I'm looking for every player with this Chiefs icon and a projection, and I'm just going to add them to that secondary group. So clicking the add player to this group, Juju. I'm going to include Kelsey in this one. I did not in the DraftKings video, but I think because there are fewer players used, I'm thinking through what the logic is there. If it makes sense to include Kelsey here, I think you can make that decision for yourself. I think for the sake of this group, just for the sake of this video, I am going to include Kelsey in this group. Sometimes I have considered, they have a big enough salary gap here that I think Mahomes could bring along Kelsey for the ride without Kelsey outscoring Mahomes. All right, so I'm going to include all of these players. You could say only apply plus minus adjustments, which would mean if you give these players boosts here, it'll make them more likely to be in the lineups, but it won't require at least one player in the lineup. I think that if I have Mahomes in the MVP spot, I want at least one of these players to be in the lineup with him. So I'm not going to click this only apply plus minus adjustments box. I'm just going to I'm going to also give boosts. So we're going to require at least one of these players, and then I'm also giving them each a little bit of a boost. So they're more likely to be in a lineup if Mahomes is at that MVP spot. And I'm going to give a smaller boost, maybe even no boost to Travis Kelce because he projects so well. Makes him more likely to be in the lineup anyway. And these are, even for these players, these are relatively small boosts. I mean, if I had a 10% boost on a player with a 6.15 projection, I'm basically giving him a 0.6 fantasy point boost. So now his projection is going to be right around, 6.75, 6.78, whatever it would be. So I'm not giving huge boosts to these players. You could go back and add little boosts. You could, double it even more. I'm going to be changing these projections a little bit anyway, but I think 10% is a fine starting place, and you might want to think about giving bigger boosts to make it even more likely that you get these players. But I also don't want to have 3 pass catchers most likely. I don't know. Maybe if Mahomes is at MVP, maybe it makes sense. But just giving you the basic premise here is I'm saying that if Mahomes is at MVP, I'm going to have one pass catcher at least one in the flex, and then possibly more because I'm giving them boosts as well. Hey guys, if you're new to Stokastic and you want to give our tools a chance, now is a great opportunity to do so. Get access to all of our NFL DFS tools 100% free for 3 days. This includes full access to all the premium content and tools for NFL DFS that we have to offer on stokastic.com, including new tools such as our lineup generator and player compare, as well as player projections, ownership projections, top stacks, our boom bust tool, and so much more. Click the link in the description of this video below to join to activate your 3-day free trial now. Please note that Fantasy Cruncher is an add-on and is not included with this trial offer. And then I do the same thing for Justin Herbert. And I just say Justin Herbert MVP. And you kind of do, it's the exact same process. Go through position, MVP spot, Justin Herbert MVP in the key spot. And then I'll go through and I will add in all of Justin Herbert's receivers. Again, looking at these icons, these projections, add in every Chargers pass catcher. And I'm including running backs for both of these quarterbacks just because they do throw to running backs a fair amount. All right, I'm happy with that. And again, I'm not going to click this button. I'm going to say, yes, we need at least one of these pass catchers. All right, good enough. And you can set plenty of other groups. You could set a group saying, if you have one of these quarterbacks in the flex spot, you want to include at least one pass catcher and include them in the flex spots. There are a lot of different groups you could set here to, make sure your lineups are correlated. I'm going to start with just these ones, and then I'll go and see, do the lineups look how I want them to? If they don't, maybe I'll make some changes. Maybe I'll add some groups here to change up the correlations a bit. But for now, I'm just going to do quarterbacks in the MVP spot. What do these lineups look like? And I will save. And then down here, I'm going to change this to use my projections. Lineups. And see what I get. All right, so getting to a ton of Patrick Mahomes. That's not a surprise. A ton of Justin Herbert. Josh Palmer. Do I really want 65% Josh Palmer? I'm not sure that I do. So then for me, maybe I'd go in here and I'd say thumbs down to Josh Palmer. I want to give him an 8% reduction to his 9.11 projection here. Maybe even more. I don't know. DeAndre Carter projects a little bit worse than Josh Palmer. He's a little bit more expensive, hence the lower ownership. But I'm only getting 14% DeAndre Carter. He was pretty active last week. For all we know, he could be the number 2 receiver. Maybe I'll give him a little bit of a boost. I'm not going to go through every player and nitpick here. I'm just showing you kind of the decisions you need to be making while you're setting up your lineups. And you'll see here, so I didn't lower my minimum projection to be included in lineups. It's currently set at 3, so I'm not going to be getting any of these guys. I think that would be a mistake. So I'm going to give a little bit of a boost to my other receivers here, just to give them the possibility of getting into my lineups. And I'll do the same for these tight ends. And you do always have to factor in how likely is it actually that these guys are, how much of these guys do you want in your lineups when you're deciding how much to give boosts. A lot of these guys, not all that much. I want to have a few shares. Pacheco, maybe I'll give him a little bit of a bigger boost because I think he's got at least a shot here. All right, good enough. And then I'll recrunch. And I'll typically end up recrunching several times, looking at the lineups, looking at how much I'm getting to different players, looking at what do these lineups look at. And this very top one here, you can see I've got Justin Herbert naked. I allowed this. I didn't set a group that said if I have Justin Herbert in the flex spot, I want at least one Chargers pass catcher. You only need one player per team. Justin Herbert does run a little bit. You don't get the full point per reception boost for pass catchers. So I think I'm okay with having Justin Herbert in the flex without any pass catchers elsewhere in the lineup. So I'm fine with doing that. If you're not comfortable with it, then you can go and make a group that says, if I have Justin Herbert in the flex, I want at least one Chargers pass catcher elsewhere in the lineup. But this is kind of the process for me. I'm going to go through and I'm going to crunch and recrunch several times until my lineup set looks the way I want it to. All right, guys, I think that will do it for this video. Thanks for watching and good luck tonight.